Good morning and welcome to Wisdom on Wednesday. Today, I want to talk to you about raising kids who strive for excellence, but not perfection. Why? Because I see our schools filled with parents and students with a bent toward perfection. And perfection really is a recipe for failure because it's unachievable. So, in this short video today, I want to talk to you about what perfection is, what causes it, some warning signs, and then I want to end with a lot of tips for what we can do to help our kids strive for excellence instead. So, if you think about our culture today, it really does extol perfection. Young athletes want to become pro athletes. Parents push for top notch schools. Um, there's this desire to have perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect face, perfect makeup, perfect everything from clothing to shoes to our homes to our looks. We want perfection. And social media doesn't help because so many times it portrays such a perfect life on the behalf on others and how they live. So perfectionism actually is the ultimate self-defeating behavior because it keeps individuals focused on failure and it undermines achievement. So, what is a perfectionist exactly? So, a perfectionist is a person who connects being perfect with their self identity. If they can't do something perfectly, then that means they're not as valuable or worthy of love and respect. So, when they mess up, it's really devastating because your self-worth drops. A perfectionist isn't perfect in every area. Even a perfectionist knows that's impossible. So you might have a child who wants to be perfect on the basketball court and keep a completely messy room. Or you may have a student who wants to have perfect math scores but could care less about how he or she writes an essay. Um, you yourself as a parent might want to keep a perfect house, but your accounting is a mess. It just means we are striving for perfection in some or many areas. This can have a debilitating effect on athletes because they grow anxious over mistakes and wind up focusing on the very things that cause defeat. So there's two paths that I see, and there's the one that we all know of, the overachieving, anxiety-prone child who always does more than required in every subject. I had one of those growing up, raising our kids. My youngest daughter was one of these. And then there's the underachieving perfectionist. And this is that child who acts like they don't care. They come across as unmotivated. And at the root of their issue is that they care so much that risking failure isn't worth it. So they place themselves in this safety net where they do enough to feel okay, but still are a frustrating distance away from success. I see actually more of these underachieving perfectionists today than I ever have before. They're so afraid of failure. So here's some warning signs. And what I'm going to do is ask you to evaluate yourself when I list these. That might help you better understand your child. And many times we as parents and adults fall into this trap as well. So I'm going to ask you, do you experience excitement when you achieve high standards? Or is it very short lived and you instead are feeling relief because you dodged a bullet, you didn't fail? Or maybe you are experiencing a very devastating level of frustration when you fail because you see it as an attack on your value as a person. Um, do you find this getting in the way of how you enjoy life because you're always haunted by this uncertainty that whenever you complete a task, that it wasn't done well enough or complete enough? And do you worry that your mistakes or the lack of doing something causes others to think badly of you? Do you find that you experience a steady source of negative emotion inside, this internal report card that keeps you engaged in this constant, perpetual self-evaluation. This is really high anxiety because we can never relax if we're doing this. Or perhaps you're a person who uh, stays away from challenging experiences or those activities that you feel uncertain about your skills in. Or do you procrastinate? This is a common coping method for perfectionists, because a perfectionist is going to wait though they have everything lined up perfectly, or when they have the perfect idea for an essay before they begin. Or do you find yourself finding fault with others and critical of others who also should be acting perfectly? Or are you envious when someone rises above you in some things? Finally, do you try to conceal your mistakes from others, which actually just prevents us from getting critical feedback, which we all need? This is a list of warning signs that might help you understand if you have this bent and if your children do. And I've often wondered what causes kids to become perfectionists. I think some of it is an innate bent in our nature, but also there are things we can do as parents that actually foster perfectionism in our kids. And one of those is praising and rewarding success with love and attention and gifts, and punishing failure by withdrawing love and getting angry and maybe giving that cold shoulder. This gives a message to kids that if I want my parents to love me, I have to be perfect. Another type of environment that can grow a perfectionistic bent in kids is a critical environment. A critical environment is one that focuses on what's gone wrong, what kids have done wrong, as compared to a corrective environment in which the focus is on more on what you want your kids to do and what you want them to work on moving forward. It's so important to maintain a corrective environment versus a critical one. I was thinking of a young girl that I met with years ago outside of our schools who was very anxiety prone. And she came to me saying, I can't understand why I always feel so anxious. And when we started to talk, she said that she always worries about her performance. She was a theater person, and she was also a singer. And she says, my dad is so great about praising me and always telling me how great I do. And every time I get up on that stage, I worry, is he going to think I'm great this time? And I asked her what she really wanted. And she said, I want my dad to love me for who I am and for not what I do. And with that, she started to cry. And I think it's so important for our kids to know that our love for them is based on who they are and not in their performance. This is one of the reasons I think it's important that we don't regularly give material rewards for achievement. These external rewards can kill internal motivation by turning these activities into a pressured kind of work. So those are some of the warning signs that I want to move now to sharing some tips with you. Most important in this is to teach your kids that success hinges less on getting everything right and more on how they handle getting things wrong. This is where creativity and passion and innovation and perseverance come into play. So you want to make it safe for your kids to make mistakes and help them see a mistake as a learning opportunity. You want to respond calmly and collectedly to their mistakes and failures. You want to expect them to try activities that they're not good at. One of my granddaughters is being forced to participate in a sport this spring that she doesn't want to do because she is very fearful that she won't be good at it. And it's really important that our kids learn to try those things that they might not necessarily be good at. I think it's important to focus on improvement, getting better, over how they're actually performing right now, on attitude, over performance, on effort and not the product. because effort is the key to mastery and success. You want to reward the process and the effort, not the talent or the product. With some of my grandchildren, I have to remind them ahead of time what I'm looking for. I'm wanting them to manage having made a mistake well. So I'll tell them, okay, we're going to be correcting your math assignment, or I see some areas of improvement in your written essay. And I tell them in advance what I want. I said, I want you to respond well to this correction. If you're not ready, let me know when you are, so that they understand what we're working toward and you're letting them practice the very thing you want. One of the things that I encourage parents to do is to ask the child to self-evaluate their work before you evaluate them. They already know and they're pretty critical of their own work. So ask them if they're happy with it, what they would do differently the next time. If you have a child who leaves their homework for the last minute and or doesn't study for a test and consequently doesn't do very well, refrain from digging in that knife and saying, I told you so. And instead, capitalize on our own emotions and say, I bet you're not happy with how things turned out. What are you going to do the next time? So the other thing would be, an example would be if your child comes home with a perfect score on a test, refrain from saying things like, you're so brilliant, because if you praise their intelligence and then they fail at something, they're going to think they're not smart anymore. So important that we praise the right things and not merely just the outcomes. Encourage you not to be preoccupied with what others think of your kids. You want to love the child you have and not the child you think you might want to have. And finally, for us as parents, we need to model a teachable spirit as well. We need to give up our right to be right. So I've thrown a lot of tips with you here quickly, and there's much more that could be said. So if this video has sparked your interest and you want to discuss this topic further, please email me. We can set up a time to meet in person or over Zoom. I'd love to talk to you more about how to raise kids who strive for excellence without having to be perfect. Have a great day.